Hello, Inspire members. It's me again. And in this video, I've put together a guide for you to be able to determine how to price items that you're selling. How to price items that you're selling. Common question across the board for new members joining our platform. And since we do not have the feature of the recommended selling price, right? Like the recommended price to sell the item, it's not yet incorporated into the app. Give us about a week, you'll see that there. But this is also important, just even once it's there, for you to be able to have a general idea as to how to price your items, okay? So I'm gonna kind of get straight into I guess the little Excel file that I put together just so you can kind of get a visualization, right, of what costs are associated with running the product, right, what to take into account, so on and so forth. So for the sake of this example, okay, we're going to start off with saying if the cost of goods, right, is 200 pesos, so we're going to put 200 pesos here. That means that for every item that you sell, which in this case, let's just use this massage gun, which is about 400 or 500 pesos. We forgot what it was, but let's say that this is 200 pesos, right? Pretty good item, by the way. 200 pesos, we're going to put that here. We obviously understand that there are other costs associated with selling this product, right? Because we have to pack, we have to ship it over to the courier, or we have to prepare to give to our courier. That's going to cost an amount of 75 pesos per order. So we have to take that into account, right? We also have a confirmation fee, right? And I don't know how to spell confirmation, obviously. We also have a confirmation fee, which is 15 pesos. This is optional. You don't have to avail it, right? But for the sake of this example, let's just say that you do want us to confirm the order, right? We're going to incorporate or add 15 pesos to the cost. And then we are going to deal with the shipping cost. Okay, the shipping cost does vary, so please be mindful of that, right? If you're selling big, bulky items, then your shipping cost is going to vary, right? For the most part, looking at our data, or average shipping cost for our clients ranges from it's about 130 to 150 pesos, right? Probably it's close to 140. So 140 is about the average shipping cost for our clients to have their items shipped via our courier. Okay, so then what we're looking at, if we're gonna, for this example, we're just gonna say 200, which I always recommend just to go over 100 pesos over what you're typically expecting, just to be sure, right? Because if it's less, then it's a win. If it's a little more than what you had anticipated, then obviously you're preparing for it and you're accounting for it here, right? So in this case, we're just gonna say that it's 200 pesos to ship that item. So obviously that's going to give us a total cost of 490 pesos. That is the cost to sell this item, have it packed, and have it shipped and delivered to your customer. All right. So how are we going to price it? Well, I have a rule of thumb, right, that I do not sell an item that I can't get a minimum of 500 pesos profits. Okay, after I've accounted for the cost that I've just laid out in front of you. So for example, if my total cost to sell this item is 490 pesos, then my minimum selling price is going to be 999. Okay, because if it's 999, then my net profit becomes, right, 509 pesos per item. Okay, if I were to change this, for example, and let's say that my cost of goods is 400 pesos, then this is automatically turned red because it doesn't meet the threshold of 500 pesos, right? And I'm only getting in return 309 back. 309 pesos will be my return. Now, for some of you saying, well, that's already a good return, but there is an underlying cost that we're not taking into account yet, which we're going to get into the next section here, which is your ad cost. Remember, you're running advertisements, so you're going to have to account for that as well, right? But we're not going to do so in this breakdown. In this breakdown, all we're talking about is the cost and how much you are going to sell the price for, and how much, theoretically speaking, you're going to gain, right, if you sell one of these items. And in this case, it's 309. So obviously, I would not price it, right? I would not price it at 999. I would probably price this item right at 1199. And that brings me back now to being over the 500 peso per profit item. Okay, so that should always be your calculation to start. Now, can you increase the product, or have it at a higher price? You definitely can, but that really depends on, right, on a few things, right? Does the product give a high perceived value? And all those things are adjustable things, right, that I do. But I always like to start off at putting it at 500, and then I monitor the sales. Okay, I monitor the sales to be able to determine, right, if the product doesn't sell, because remember, there are a few variables, right, that you're going to be accounting for. Number one, right, are you targeting the right audience? Okay, that's going to determine whether you generate sales or not, right? So that's one variable that if things are not going well, you have to account for. Is it the audience, right? Another thing, is it the product, right? Is it the product that may not just be desired? So that's another variable that you have to account for if, right, if you're not generating sales. Another variable is, is the creative good? Is that the reason why it's not selling? Because the creative is not of good quality, and that's a huge, right, like huge aspect of your product being successful or not, right? If you have a good video ad, a good image, right, a good creative to present your product to a customer, and for them to be able to want to buy it, right? Another factor, which is, it's this your website good, but that should never be the case, right? Like, you should have a good website already. So we're going to focus on these three things. And the last underlying factor, right, which is be a fourth one, is your pricing the problem? That I price the item too high? So because I have different variables, right, that I have to account for, I want to be able to reduce the amount of variables that I'm taking into account, right? And I'm trying to process to determine why things are not working. So I like to price the item at the maximum of 500 pesos, and I'll launch the product in my testing phase, which at that point, it allows me to evaluate, right, if things are working or not working. And if they're not working, then I can pretty much remove the pricing as an issue, right? Because if it's the pricing, then it's just not a product that I'm gonna want to sell, because I'm not going to, I'm not going to get the profits that I'm looking for, right? So I like to remove one of those variables, and then I'm stuck, I'm left with 3 instead of 4. Right? I'm left with 3 instead of 4. And then I evaluate if it's the video ad, which there are metrics that you can do so, right? The audience, the CPMs, your data is going to kind of guide you in the direction as to why things are not working. So I like to price it at this point. Now, granted, right, if the item starts to generate sales and it's doing really well, guess what? I'm going to increase the price at that point, right? And I'm going to monitor if the sales continuously are increasing and are steady at the same pace as it was at 999. So if I'm selling it, right, and I'm getting good sales at 999, then I may bump it up to 1199. And if my sales are steady, then I may bump it up to 1399, right? So I'm going to continuously increase that price until I get to a point that I see that my sales start to dip, because maybe I'm pricing the item a little bit too high, right? But I like to gradually work my way up through the pricing, rather than what most people do is they price the item and then they start bringing down the price because they think that's the problem, right? Because they think that the pricing is too high. So gradually work your way in increasing that price until you find that good medium where you realize that that is the sweet spot of what price you should be selling that item. So I know that I just diverted just a tad bit, but I wanted to give you like a better understanding of the logic of some of these things, right? And that it's pretty much related to your actual pricing of your product. So I like to start it off at having that 500 price point, right? So again, we're going to put this back at 200. And then our cost, obviously, now our net profit becomes 700 because we're selling it for 1199, but we're going to go back to 999. Okay. So I'm sure you're understanding or you're following me so far. Now let's move over to the next part of this pricing calculator. So the thing that I told you about a little while earlier is that you haven't yet accounted for your ad cost, right? You've accounted for your cost of goods, handling, and obviously shipping and confirmation, which if you decide to do so, but there's still, right, a cost of how much you're spending daily to advertise. So let's say, for example, okay, that you generated in 1 day of running ads, you generated 5 sales. Okay. So at that point, your gross revenue is 4,995. Why is that? Because you multiply the 5 sales times the selling price. If you're selling it for $9.99, right? You are going to multiply however many sales you got by the amount that you're selling the product. So that becomes your gross revenue, right? Which is what people show you in screenshots, and you'll see 400,000, 300,000, 2 million on a monthly basis, but that really doesn't give you the full picture, right, of how much money they're actually taking home, right? So that's important. So now let's say that you sold 5, so your gross revenue is 499, 5,000. Let's just say that, right? Here you have your cost, your sub cost, right, of how much it takes for it, right, to sell each product. So remember, it's 590. So you're going to multiply the 490 times the 5 sales, because you know that this is what it takes, right? This 490 is what it takes to have that order shipped out and have it delivered to your customer, including the cost of goods. So now your total sub cost, right, is 2,400, right? 2,450. Again, multiply this times the number of sales, okay? And you have your total sub cost. Now, let's say, for example, that in that day, you spent 1,000 pesos, okay? So now what you're gonna add is you're gonna add your total sub cost, right? Operational cost or cost to ship your item, plus your ad cost, okay? So that means that your total cost in reality that day wasn't 2,400, it was 3,400. Okay, 3,400. So now guess what? Now what you're going to do is you are going to subtract, right, the 3,400 minus the 4,900, which is your gross revenue, which is this right here, right? Pretty much this number, okay, minus the 4,995, which is your gross, which gives you a net profit at that point of 1,500 pesos. And obviously that will vary. If you got 3 sales, then you've earned 527 pesos. If you got 2 sales, well, guess what? You pretty much have broken even, right? You've broken even, which is the reason why it's important to price it at over 500, right? So it's only going to require 2 sales for you to break even. And at that point, you start to become profitable, because if you're only selling this product for 699, well, guess what? If you got 2 sales, you're still in the negative. Now you're in the negative instead of being in the positive, right? Or break even at this point. If you got 2 sales, excuse me. So instead of being break even, if you sell it for 699, now you're in the negative 582. So it's going to require more sales, right? It's going to require 5 sales pretty much for you to break even. Okay. And then after that, right, that's when you start to become profitable. So that having that 500 peso per product gives you that cushion. And again, you can go higher, right? But it really all depends on the perceived value of that product. And if you can get away with selling it at 1,000, right, and you have 1,000 peso profit, for example, let's say that you're selling this for 199, right? So your net profit, or let's just go 1,499. So if you're selling it for 1,499, right, then your net profit becomes 1,000 pesos per product. So now it really only takes you 1 sale to break even, and then everything else becomes profit, right? But if the product doesn't sell, then you may be concerned that it may be the pricing that's a little too high. So it just, I like to walk and kind of adjust prices up rather than down. right? So that's just my philosophy as to how I operate and what I teach my students when they're launching, right? Don't try to become, make all the cash up front, right? Gradually work your way there. The cash will be there, right? And it saves you more. It saves you more time in testing and adjusting and doing all these things, right? So for me, it's worth kind of going it in this direction, right? So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to give you more because if I start going, I can just talk about more strategies and things to focus on, right? And do bear in mind that there are other costs that you have to associate, right? Like your Shopify, like your app subscription, right? But those are monthly expenses. So you should have a tracker of your monthly revenue and so somewhere like a P&L, like a profit and loss, right? And maybe I make a video for you guys as to how to actually create a profit and loss sheet, right? Where you're able to track everything that you have from miscellaneous expenses to apps to all that good stuff, right? And you can pretty much update that daily. And it should just pretty much give you, on the daily basis, how much money you're actually taking home, right? So hopefully this video has been helpful to you. If you do have questions, please make sure that you contact us and contact support, right? And someone will be there to assist you and answer those questions. So please, I guess, bear with us. Give it about a week or so, and you will have the recommended selling price in the app, right? And also an estimated shipping cost per product, so you don't have to kind of do the calculation on your own. Those are going to be additional features that we incorporate over the next week or so. So again, this video has dragged on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to go over it in somewhat of detail. So again, hopefully it's been helpful. Have a great day, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye-bye.